Many are filling this out, so thank you. For those of you just joining, we're going to keep the poll open for maybe another 10 seconds, and then we'll get started. Great. So I see that most of you have voted, so let me go ahead and close this and move this aside, and we can launch right in. Here's the agenda for today. We have a lot of information to cover. Going to try to get a lot of good demo time with Markus's network here at Pennoni. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a brief introduction, very, very brief, to Meraki. It's not going to be comprehensive, so if you do have questions, take note. You can check out our website or ask a question at any point during this webinar in the, I think there's a chat box at the bottom right corner of your screen somewhere that you can enter a question. My good friends and colleagues, Chris and Olivia, are here with me today. They're fantastic. They're going to be taking down all of your questions, answering the ones that they can, and then we'll be fielding questions for Markus here as well, so type those in. We're going to do a quick introduction to Meraki, like I said, a brief discussion about why cloud networking works, and then we're going to launch right into talking about Pennoni Associates, and we're going to have Markus come on at that point and give us some of his thoughts and feedback. And then what we're going to do, we're really lucky, we're going to demo the Pennoni Associates network and look at their different Meraki products and listen to Markus and hear about any stories that he wants to share about that. And then we'll wrap up with a brief overview of the product families and get into some live Q&A if there's time. So before we begin, I am excited to talk about our free access point for qualified IT professionals on the line. So if you are a qualified IT professional, you'll get an access point that looks similar to what you see on your screen. It's free. It's yours to keep and use. It's a great way to get your hands on Meraki technology, and we'll be throwing in a 3-year cloud license with it as well, so it'll be fully operational. You just need to give us a call at the end of this webinar to confirm your shipping address. There should have been a reminder email somewhere in your inbox. Check your spam folders too, that has the phone number of your Meraki sales rep, and that phone number is who you are going to call to confirm your shipping address for your free access point. So without further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about Meraki. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, we are a leader in cloud networking. We have tens of thousands of customer networks deployed all over the world. We were actually founded in 2006 by a research team at MIT. That research team is, or that founding team is still with us today, so we continue to have a great tradition of innovation and research at Meraki. We have a full cloud managed networking portfolio. So we have wireless access points, that's our MR line. We have switches, that's our MS line. We have security appliances, that's our MX line. And then of course we have a 100% free mobile device management solution, that's Systems Manager. So again, we're really lucky because Markus at Pennoni uses all 4 of these product lines, so we'll get to see all of them in the demo. And if you weren't aware, we were recently acquired by Cisco. We're going to form their new cloud networking group. We're really excited about this, mostly for the opportunity to use Cisco's reach to bring Meraki to new markets, and because Cisco has committed to all 4 of the product lines that I just mentioned. So we're going to continue researching and developing and bringing you new features across all 4 of those product lines. So this is just a slide showing you a few of our customers. It's obviously not a comprehensive list, but does show that we have a presence across multiple firms. Our customers are our biggest fans, so I do encourage you to reach out to us if you see somebody on here that you would like to speak to about the customer experience. We're usually very happy to set you up so that you can talk with other customers about what it's like using Meraki products. And you can also go to meraki.com/customers and see some case studies and interviews and get some good information there. So one of the questions that we often get when we're talking about Meraki and introducing it for the first time to folks is why cloud networking? And we believe that the cloud increases IT efficiency, specifically around the areas of manageability, scalability, and cost savings. So, when we're thinking about things like manageability, with our Meraki dashboard, which we'll demo for you shortly, you get this end-to-end visibility and control. You can see all of the devices across your networks and drill down even into individual client devices. You get things like seamless updates. You get very fantastic and deep Layer 7 application and device visibility. So, from configuration to maintenance and support, manageability is far easier with our cloud solution. And then in terms of scalability, the cloud is massively scalable. It's elastic. It can grow and shrink with your business needs. And finally, in terms of cost savings, you have reduced infrastructure costs. You're not paying for, for example, with wireless, for wireless LAN controllers or, additional hardware like that. You can reduce your training costs because the dashboard is very intuitive and very easy to use and get up and running. And then finally, because it's so easy to manage distributed locations, sometimes you can reduce your travel or on-site costs as well. So this is just an illustration. You can see our dashboard in the background, and here's a snapshot of all 4 of our product lines here. And I just want to highlight again that everything we build here at Meraki is designed to be 100% cloud managed. So in speaking about that, let's talk about the cloud networking architecture here. The one thing that I want to highlight, again, this is just a very, very brief introduction to Meraki. The one thing I want to highlight about our cloud architecture is the out-of-band cloud management. So what that means is that when we're talking about cloud architecture, you have your Meraki hardware, so your access points, your switches, or your security appliances, and they initiate a connection back to our cloud. And that connection is secured twice, in fact. First with a proprietary Meraki encryption mechanism, and then again with SSL. And that connection will carry only management and monitoring information back to us. We never see user data. So it is secure. No user traffic is ever passing through our cloud. That's that red arrow that you see veering off to the left. So again, what you see on the screen is just a couple of our benefits. We're scalable, we're reliable. Our cloud does have a 4.9 uptime SLA that we haven't defaulted on. And if you have any questions, you want to see more about our certifications or maybe learn about our daily penetration tests and things that we have at our data centers, I encourage you to go to meraki.com/trust. We're very transparent, so you can get a lot of information there. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Markus. Markus, are you here? If you don't mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. I just took myself off mute. I am the Director of IT for Pennoni Associates. We're a multidiscipline civil engineering consulting firm based in Philadelphia. We have about 28 offices throughout the Northeast United States, and later we'll talk a little bit about our network topology and how Meraki fits into that. But we, as any typical professional services firm operates, we have a variety of locations and service lines that matrix across the company, and so we endeavor to collaborate whenever possible, which makes network technology that much more important. The other thing that obviously has been a major trend in business is the increasing importance of mobility, and as such we've deployed a large number of iPhones, many of them in replacement of BlackBerries, and so we found that the Systems Manager platform is actually a nice replacement for BlackBerry Enterprise Server. So I don't want to go overboard, but that's sort of the basics of Pennoni and what we're doing, and I think we're going to get into some really interesting points.
Yes, and so just for the clarification of those on the call, because we have a bunch of people from varied backgrounds here, can you speak a little bit to who Pennoni's primary clientele is and a little bit more about what they do?
Yeah, so an engineering firm very often works as a subconsultant to owners or architects or designers. We do not have in-house architecture, so very often, let's say, there's a photo of a building right there, an architect would be leading the design effort and come up with the concept and maybe a lot of the drawings, but then they pull in a specialist for the structural engineering or the mechanical or the electrical, which are all things that we offer. And then as you see, there's landscaping and walkway. That's also the kind of work that we would do as well. So we design outside landscaping, and so all of this is done, of course, in CAD software. That's a generic term, but typically software by Autodesk, things like Civil 3D or Revit. And of course, we have other business lines. They're a little bit harder to describe if you're not in our industry, but we also do construction inspection and fabrication inspection, things like that. And then we've got geotechnical and environmental engineering as well. So we're fairly diverse, but I think the things that most people understand best are related to the design of buildings or infrastructure.
Okay. And you had mentioned that you are headquartered in Philadelphia and you do have offices spread out all across the East Coast. Can you give a little bit of insight into what your IT team looks like? Are they all in one place? Are they distributed across those locations? How many of them are there?
Of course. Well, I'll chuckle as I say this. I think the Meraki map of our Wi-Fi network is the most accurate map of our offices that we have, because we've got conceptual things that we've done in-house, but they're not nearly as nice. So later on, when we get into the Meraki dashboard, you'll see our footprint visually. But we're in several states, going all the way from Virginia up to New England, and our IT staff is largely headquartered in Philadelphia. But I do have a sysadmin in Northern Virginia. We have a mid-level help desk person in Columbia, Maryland. We've got a CAD design support person in Mechanicsburg, which is near Harrisburg, PA. So we do have some slight distribution of our IT staff, but for the most part, we are centered in our Philly office, and it makes sense for a lot of reasons logistically. And you know, obviously, from a management standpoint, it is a little bit easier to manage people who are local and face-to-face.
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is the one about sort of having foresight, and I was wondering here if you could speak a bit about sort of the historical state of your network and sort of what was the foundation behind your seeking out Meraki in the first place?
All right, well, I guess we'd have to go back a few years, and this is probably not too long after Meraki actually launched their AP product line, their access points. But we really had not done anything with wireless for a long time. And you know, this is in spite of random requests for why don't we have wireless in this office or that office. And I have to say part of the reason was simply because I just wasn't satisfied that there was a solution that would give us a simple starting point or a simple entry point and then scale out to the size company we were. We didn't intend on day one or even in the first 6 months to deploy wireless to the entire company. And a lot of the solutions that we looked at were sort of like controller or license-based, whether it was Cisco or Brocade or, you know, what have you. And, you know, that doesn't mean they haven't changed over time. And, you know, many of them have evolved the way they offer these things. But at the time, I just frankly wasn't satisfied that there was something that was simple. Because, you know, again, with things that have controllers, you're talking about extra equipment, and then, of course, you know, a whole new platform that you have to learn and support. And I think that we actually got a sort of random cold call from Meraki, and you know, it ended up with me, and I spoke to the person, and it sounded kind of interesting, and I was enamored with the idea of a pure cloud-managed piece of infrastructure, piece of hardware. And I think it all started with 1 or 2 access points in our headquarters office, and it satisfied our need to have something that we could grow with organically and slowly. And then over the course of about 18 months, we then ended up normalizing the firm and deploying it everywhere. And you know, of course, many other things developed and emerged from Meraki in that time, and we'll talk about how we added other pieces of equipment. But it really all started with the need for Wi-Fi and the need for a simple, easy-to-manage platform. Because I do not have a large IT staff. I only have 3 sysadmins and about 5 help desk people. So it's not like we can take on a lot of new infrastructure without considering the support and operations and management impact. And we're, you know, frankly at our limit every living day. So to add on an entirely new platform or a new application like Wi-Fi, you know, wasn't something that we wanted to jump into lightly.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to the next slide here. So it sounds like you heard about Meraki from a cold call, and before I ask you to sort of discuss a little bit your experience with, you know, your trial experience, you know, what concerns, if any, did you have that the trial needed to address? So you said before you were looking for things that needed to be scalable, needed to be simple. Was there anything else on that list?
Well, I think that we were looking for something that would have multiple SSIDs. I mean, in a way, Meraki sort of had a feature set that was exactly what we would have wanted if we sat down and brainstormed. So it had, this radius authentication, had the ability for us to stand up and tear down SSIDs either in test or for various purposes. So it satisfied a lot of our security requirements. And to be honest, there was a need for guest wireless access kind of surfacing at the same time as we were doing this. So it fit in very nicely with that because, we were being hit simultaneously with an increasing number of employees wanting to bring a device to work and connect to a Wi-Fi network, as well as clients visiting us, partners, clients, owners of projects, and, them, of course, always asking, what network can I connect to? And previous to Wi-Fi, we were sort of holding our noses and occasionally connecting them to our wired network. Mm-hmm. And so, now, of course, we don't have to do that. We say, okay, we've got the Pennoni guest network, here's the 10-digit key, and it's not something we have to really think too much about anymore. So I would say that, a couple of these things are, I guess in a way, some of the needs emerged after the technology was in place. We kind of had these aha moments where we said, oh, no, we can do this. We've always wanted to, and it's not like we put together a formal RFP for a Wi-Fi network. We just hadn't really, given that kind of foresight.
Okay. So I do want to dig a little bit deeper into your trial experience. I know you had said you deployed maybe 1 or 2 APs in the headquarters, and then over the course of 18 months rolled it out. Rolled wireless out, company-wide, but can you walk us through the process you took? How easy or hard was it to evaluate the gear?
I would say that the Wi-Fi trial, if you could call it that, it was pretty much like we plugged it in, we configured it, it worked, and we said, okay, this is great. we're going to buy more. We don't know the pace or the cadence of installs, but it didn't take much to evaluate it and gain confidence. I would say the appliances that we really did do a more exhaustive test on were the MX security appliances, because we had just been going through this long conversion of our network from one carrier to another, and we created this sort of hybrid where we had a very large number of sites on MPLS, and then a small number of sites, maybe 40% of sites, 35% on the carrier-managed cloud VPN solution, and we just we had a lot of problems with it. So while we had a fully integrated network, and they were sort of meshing routes on their end and injecting them into BGP of our MPLS, the performance was not good because this carrier, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but basically the traffic had to route through a far corner of New York State, just simply due to the fact that their concentrators were located there. And so it ended up adding a lot of latency to traffic inbound and outbound from those VPN sites. And so we took some punches on network performance as a result, and it just wasn't ideal between the bottlenecking, the additional latency, and then also to some extent I guess the loss of bandwidth due to the encryption algorithms they were using. We just weren't really pleased. So I think at some point we woke up to the fact that these new MX security appliances were released, and we started peeling through the feature set on the web page, and we said, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could cut over those VPN sites to appliances and really, I mean, it's self-managed, only that they're appliances that we bought, but they're all cloud managed and actually through the same management console, and we felt like this would give us an advantage over something that's cloud managed but by the carrier. So every time we needed to make a change or update a WAN side IP address for a broadband connection, we'd have to work with the carrier and do a hot cut and all sorts of nonsense like that, which typically is something you set up once and forget it, but sometimes these things are a little bit more dynamic. And so anyway, we decided that we would evaluate the MX security appliances between 2 sites, and we were in the process of converting a site, or we had converted a site from more expensive fiber to broadband to save money, and we put in the MX and tested, and we were pretty pleased with the result. So it didn't take a whole lot of testing for us to satisfy ourselves that this would be a good scalable platform for building out a portion of our network. Now understand, we still have dedicated fiber services to many of our sites, our larger offices, like 30 meg connections. But then we have a large number of sites that have 20 or 15 or fewer people, and they can't justify $1,500 or $2,000 a month recurring cost for a variety of reasons. And so the MX security appliances seem to fit well with the model of deploying broadband to those sites.
That's great. So, and how easy was it for you setting that up? You said it was cloud-based and a lot more simple, but do you know how much time it took to get these 17 sites connected, up and running in your estimate?
Well, I mean, duration of the project is quite long because we had to time things based on office moves and all sorts of other changes. So I wouldn't measure it by that, but I would say to deploy a device into an office took, I don't know, a couple hours. I mean, it actually took more time to coordinate the brief outage or the brief downtime with folks than it actually took to configure the devices. Because really, once you get one configured and you're reasonably confident that you like all the settings, and in our case, we weren't really using traffic shaping or any of the advanced feature sets, so really you could just use that as a template and basically copy it to a new device, and then it gives you a starting point. You throw in some of the custom config stuff, change the address. You arrive at the site. If you've drop shipped the device there, then you plug in your laptop and you assign the public IP, and the whole affair can be over within 30 minutes. And in some cases it was quick, like if we were lighting up a brand new office where we hadn't occupied the space yet. But as I said, in cases where we're doing a conversion for people, we have to schedule it at close of business or during lunch or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we've talked about the access points a bit. We've talked about the security appliances a bit. Is there anything you want to add about the switches? What caused you to decide to deploy those, or is there anything that they're doing for you that replaced older hardware?
Sure. So we have a fairly large investment in Cisco equipment, and it is growing in age, or I guess it's aging, I should say, and that was all tied to a voice over IP implementation that we did about 5.5 years ago. But that only covered a portion of the company, and since that time we've acquired some other offices or some other companies, and so when you acquire a company, it's very likely that they have different technology than you, including routers, switches, and everything else. And in the case of a few of these acquisitions, the equipment was quite old. And so what ended up happening is, as we would identify problematic equipment, we would then have to replace it. And I think this coincided again with the release of the MS series. We had a couple needs for 24 to 48 port switches, and we said, you know what, we really like the visibility and the management of this platform. Maybe it makes sense to evaluate these switches and see if they offer us any advantages. And of course they do. So I think we deployed one or two of them in quote unquote test or try and buy mode, mm-hmm. And we were happy with them, and I think that was it. And it's not like we're going to go back and replace switches that have hit a certain number of years. I mean, I'd like to think we could do that, but our budget isn't there. But as we recognize the need for replacement or expansion switches, I think we're pretty confident that the Meraki switch line is appropriate almost in every case, unless you're talking about 10 gig switching for your top of rack applications or something in your colo or your data center. Obviously, Meraki is going to point you at Cisco. So I think for most of our applications, which are just branch office connectivity and client workstations and things, the Meraki switch series works well. And then, of course, when you're working with engineers who are complaining about network speed or different things that come up, these switches give you an amazing level of visibility into traffic flow and what's been going on the network, what applications are using most of the bandwidth, Pandora typically, and then that gives you something that you can go back to them with and say, hey, here's actually what's going on and why the network feels slow. And honestly, there are certainly tools that you could use to plug into Cisco equipment and get similar numbers and results, but again, that's an additional investment that you make on top of the Cisco equipment, SmartNet that you're paying for, and we just never took the step of doing that, again, because similar to our fears of running a Wi-Fi network with our own on-premise installed management system. Again, it would have been another system that we've got to run on a VM and needs a SQL backend, and we already have too many of those systems. So we're certainly not going to add more. And so having all this in a single pane of glass management system, I think, just makes a lot of sense for a company of our size.
Oh, that's great. We did get a question from the audience. It seems to be pretty popular. They want to know whether or not with the switches, if you're using the virtual stacking feature, if you haven't heard it called that, that's the ability to go into the switch ports page and see all of the switch ports across your entire organization or across your network and configure them in one fell swoop.
You mean all the switch ports in one physical location?
Well, you can actually, depending on how you have it set up, you can see all of the switch ports across multiple physical locations. I think they have to be in the same network.
Yeah, I don't believe we've done that because I don't even think we have multiple switches in any single location yet. And I'm actually clicking through, but I'm pretty sure. Oh wait, no, we do in one site. But I think the answer is no. We haven't really done. I don't think we've done that.
Okay. Thank you. So let's move on. So I do want to talk a little bit about how Pennoni is using Systems Manager. Can you tell us a little bit about whether you were implementing mobile device management before you chose Systems Manager, and why did you choose Systems Manager?
Boy, that's an interesting one. I kind of hinted at the fact that we were a BlackBerry-heavy company before, and Meraki really sort of coincided with the rise of iPhone for us, and I think we probably were like 80 deployments deep without any management system, and at some point we started to say, well, this is going to be the wagon going down the hill and the wheels coming off at some point soon, because we didn't really have an effective way to inventory this collection of phones, and you just sort of unwittingly get yourself to that point, because for us, iPhones started with just a group of people. It was 5 people who needed them, and then it was 10, and then it was 20. So without even trying, we hit 50 or 60 pretty quickly. And I think it was right around that point where Systems Manager went into beta, and it showed up in our management portal. Mm-hmm. And I think we looked at it. It took like one glance, and we said, hey, this is a no-brainer. Let's start deploying it on every iPhone. So we went back to the phones that had already been put out into the population, and then of course every new iPhone that we deployed, we made sure that we had the profile installed, that it was showing up. We'd go in and modify the record and add the end user's name and things like that. And then I think that it was like 6 months in, or maybe a little bit more, when they had that issue with the Apple cert, and so we had to go out and obtain our own, which meant that the existing certs had to be reinstalled. But I think anybody adopting it today isn't going to have to deal with that issue. But we were on it so early that I think that everybody was still using Meraki's own push notification cert. So I guess at some point Apple clamped down and said, no, each tenant has to have their own, which makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we've gone, and actually I just had to renew that, so that was a year ago, which means that it was 6 months before that, give or take. So we've been on Systems Manager for, I suppose, about 18 months, or perhaps the entire life of the product, give or take a week or two. And of course, that just like many of the other products has grown in capabilities, and I think one of the recent things that we're keeping our eyes on and looking at is the iOS Systems Manager app that you can download, and it does a little bit better job of GPS locating the device, and it gives you the ability to, I think, push out notifications and a few other features like that. But I would say even without the app loaded on mobile devices, it works very well, and it gives us the information that we need, which is that if you want to see what version of iOS phones have, we can't necessarily push new versions out. That certainly would be nice. But we can at least open up tickets and then work with the end user to make sure that they run through the updates and they get iOS 6.1.2 or 6.1.3 or whatever. It gives us some visibility of what apps people have, although we don't really care too much about that. We care more about pushing standard icons out, and there are a couple apps that we do want to push, like Microsoft Link. And so we've leveraged those features, and I think most recently you guys added in Microsoft Exchange auto-config, which we are just beginning to test. And this also is a good time because we're beginning a transition to Office 365. So depending on whether we can get that to work, it could be something where we trigger push of new credentials when we move somebody to Office 365, and you can essentially tag devices, and then a new policy will apply to them. The other thing I'll mention quickly is that, and this kind of brings everything back full circle, the Systems Manager lets you configure wireless configurations for these mobile devices. So we can actually push the wireless AP of our Meraki AP system, and essentially whenever we deploy an iPhone, then they're automatically configured for Wi-Fi. We don't really have to walk them through it, which frankly created quite a few support tickets prior to that. So we're able to auto-configure Wi-Fi, which saves us quite a few headaches. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we're leveraging, but that's probably most of it.
Okay, that's quite a bit. So inventory, sort of inventory management for iOS versions and things of that nature. A little bit of app management, pushing Wi-Fi config templates out to mobile devices. It's all good stuff.
And one of the other things, if you have like a corporate intranet or something, it's nice to be able to put like little shortcuts on their iPhone as well. So we just launched a mobile time entry system that is web-based, but it's mobile. It's a mobile website, and so we were able to push that out to everybody's phone with a simple icon in the configuration profile.
That's great. Awesome. All right, so I think this is the slide that sort of says the results of your Meraki network and what are the benefits there. Do the things here sum it up for you, or is there anything else that you want to add? We have high visibility, the scalability, the simple user interface.
No, I think that's it, and I've shared a lot of my insight and feelings about the products as we've gone through. I think scalability certainly is a strong positive in the direction of Meraki, and that's part of the reason we entered into it in the first place. We looked at it and we said, okay, this is a product line that could work for 3 sites, or it could probably work well for 300. We're certainly not at that point yet, but we knew that the company over time expects to grow, and I mean, obviously we were surprised when Meraki was acquired, but it appears as though that's not going to have any influence on the longevity of the products or the services at the moment. So anyway, I think in the long run we're excited about the fact that this system can just continue to grow, and we don't have to make investments in additional equipment on our side. Because frankly, I think there are a lot of opportunities for cloud managed equipment, not just network, but it still blows my mind that Canon and all these companies with copiers still insist that you install an on-premise device management platform. It's crazy to me, because they really could just do exactly what Meraki's done and create a multi-tenant environment and point all these devices at that same place. It's just kind of mind-blowing. But Meraki is probably one of the leaders when it comes to cloud managed equipment, and so maybe there's an opportunity for Systems Manager, right?
Yeah, well, can
manage all the copiers as well.
Pass that feedback along to Abe. So moving on to the next slide, so the benefits of Cisco Meraki Cloud Networking. There were a couple of interesting points here. I was wondering maybe, let's see, we can start with the first one. If you could speak more about the seamless connectivity, like how is that set up for you at Pennoni?
Well, yeah, I'm embarrassed to admit that prior to Meraki being everywhere, we did have a couple Linksys access points in random sites where we had broadband, and depending on which one of my guys set it up, it very well could have had a different SSID. So then what ended up happening is you'd go to a site and there'd be a new key, or worse yet, I think we had the same SSID used in a few sites, but then different encryption types. So one would be WEP and one would be WPA, and of course that causes problems as well. So obviously Meraki being everywhere creates a sense of uniformity that otherwise would have been difficult to accomplish. And that means that we can set somebody up, either a client or an employee, and obviously the company paid devices we're pushing the config out to anyway, but it means that we can roam from office to office and not worry about setting up a new Wi-Fi connection when I get to Chantilly, Virginia, or Mechanicsburg or Pittsburgh. And so that obviously, it sounds like a small thing, but again, these things generate many help desk tickets a week if you don't have them auto configured, and so it certainly has reduced tickets. Of course, we get new tickets for different things that are ancillary or related, but still, at least the basic config is taken care of automatically.
Okay, great. And then in terms of the bandwidth control, the feature set that we have in Meraki, that layer 7 visibility and traffic shaping, what sort of traffic were you seeing? Have you applied any group policies?
That's an interesting one. We kind of take a case-by-case approach to this, because let's say a site has a broadband connection to the internet and they get 50 meg down, we're probably not going to go nuts in traffic shaping for them, for the 7 employees there, because we don't have, we don't have that much egress or ingress on the connecting side of their site, or they can't push or pull that much data anyway. So I think at one point we looked at doing a little bit more traffic shaping, but if we monitor how people are using our networks, we don't see major abuse, so we've kind of stayed away from it, to be honest. And it might be something that we have to reconsider at some point if we see abuse, but since many of the connections that you buy these days are asynchronous, meaning you get 30, 40, 50 down, I think that there's a little bit of room left for a couple people to stream Pandora. And then, so we're trying at the same time to create, a friendly workplace. These are maybe some employee retention measures that we're taking as well. And, I think, let's face it, a lot of people who are entering the workforce do have some expectation that they'll be able to do these things at work. And, so I think to be draconian, it doesn't necessarily play well. So we like the features, and I think we've looked at some of them, and certainly there are ways of using this to secure your network, and those are things that we're in favor of, but not as much of the music things.
Okay. All right. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to just about the second to last slide that we have here. Do you want to say anything here about the future of Pennoni and Cisco Meraki? Are you going to keep using us as you grow?
Maybe. I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course. I think that we already have a strong network built with the AP network, and as we look at retiring equipment, on the switch side, I think we've got a really natural, good fit for the 24 and 48 port switches that you guys have. I also see expansion of additional VPN sites, and obviously we're not going to enter into another VPN world at this point. So I think as the company grows, we'll continue to grow with Meraki. And I think the only thing I would be looking for is maybe if the Meraki appliances had the ability to do, maybe take the place of a Cisco router in a site where we have MPLS, and I think that's something that the two companies have been talking about. But at the moment, we're quite pleased, and so we've got a bit of a hybrid, but I'd like to think that at some point, if I have a site that does need to be on MPLS, come up for renewal, maybe we can consider a Meraki piece of equipment.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're really, really excited to have you help explain how Pennoni uses Cisco Meraki. Markus, thank you so much.
Sure.
What we're going to do now is actually launch into a demo. So I'll go through and show at very high level, because we have about 20 minutes, and I do want to try to leave some time for questions. High level look at your network and show the features of our products there. So let me just log in. Hopefully this will be your network. I think I found it. You have to let me know if it's not. All right, is this you? Looks like. All right, so let's go ahead. So what I've done is I've logged into.
Yep, you found me.
Oh, you're on. Okay, good. There was just deafening silence. So what I've done is I've gone to dashboard.meraki.com, which anyone that had any of our network appliances would do, and logged in with my user credentials. And I previously found Pennoni's network, so was able to get dropped in to their overview page here, which is what you're looking at. So you can see they are, like he said, a distributed network with a bunch of locations all over the East Coast. And what's great is I could, if I wanted to, deep dive into any single one of these and get more information about particular networks or appliances that are in a location. Or if I wanted to, I could do a search, maybe do a search here for the wireless network and click into that. So let's go talk about wireless first. Let me click into it, actually. There we go. So what we've done is we've come up here on the overview page, and what this is basically showing is the status of the APs on the network. Green means that they're healthy. We are integrated with Google Maps, so you can get a bunch of different map options here. We could, if we wanted to, see the current clients that are connected in real time right now to a particular AP. What we were looking at before was just the number of recent connections. So I'm just going to pick one that looks like it has a lot of connections here and deep dive into it. So this is the configuration page for this particular access point. Every device that we sell has a configuration page that will have some status information here at the top and then a live tools section. So at the top, in terms of configuration, usually it'll be things like MAC address and serial numbers, and here we can actually see that this is an MR14 access point. It'll show you which SSIDs are being broadcast from this access point. So is private your LAN Wi-Fi?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so you've got an AirPlay and a guest SSID as well. Some public IP information, some history and event logs, and down here is the live tools section. So depending on the type of device that we're looking at, whether it's a switch or a security appliance or an access point, you're going to have different live tools. And so right now we're looking at the current client's live tool. These are real-time troubleshooting tools built right into the dashboard to give you some information about these particular devices, whichever device you're looking at. So basically there's 18 clients currently connected to this access point. Here's a visualization of their traffic. If I wanted to, I could click into any single one of them and get more information about that particular client device. And if I scroll down, there's some other useful statistics like uptime for the access point. If there had been a reboot or some downtime, there would be a red sliver here or a chunk of red. This green is just delineating a time span. So right now we're looking at a period of 12 hours, but we could change this and look at 1 week or 2 days, whatever we prefer. And then there's some other useful things here like a channel utilization tool. We can do spectrum analysis, ping, trace route, or blink the LEDs. So if we're troubleshooting remotely and need to point someone to the device, in a stack of devices, we can blink the LEDs so people know that which device to approach and work on. So what's really cool here, and this is a view that you would have regardless of which device you have at Meraki. It would be a similar view. So right now we're looking at this from the access point perspective, but it's this client page. This tends to be one of the favorite pages of our clients. It's basically, let's see, I'm going to look at the last week because this might be more interesting. Essentially what this page is telling us is that for the last week, across all 3 SSIDs that Pennoni is broadcasting, here's what the data consumption has looked like. And here are the client devices that have connected to the wireless network and passed traffic through it. So it looks like you had 637 unique client devices The status indicator here says who's online right now versus who was online recently. So you have a bunch of people, it looks like, connected to Wi-Fi at the moment. And it looks like they're on the guest network, several of them. But we can add other things here. We could add OS, a manufacturer. And let me move this over here. Because one of the really neat features of this page is a sort of Google-like contextual search. So you can see here I typed in iPad and immediately found that, again, over the last week, across the entire wireless network, there were 33 iPads out of the 637 unique devices that are connected via Wi-Fi. And you may have noticed this little gold color here. It actually is showing me what fraction of the overall traffic is basically caused by these iPads. So the gold color matches on the search term here that I input. But I can do things like search for Windows devices. And this is useful because what you can do, you were talking earlier, Markus, about how you had a whole bunch of people bringing devices onto your network and sort of a BYOD issue. It's a really just quick and dirty way to get a sense for what kinds of devices are connecting to your Wi-Fi and how much traffic they're consuming out of the total. So you can see that the Windows devices account for quite a bit of the traffic, even though they're not even half of the devices connecting. But you can get down even to the nitty-gritty and see, if you have Windows XP devices, you can search by IP address, you can search by MAC address. If you were integrated with Active Directory, you can search by user, device description, that sort of thing. So very, very useful. And similarly, this is sort of the application fingerprint, if you will, of the traffic that has passed through the Wi-Fi network for the last week. So it shows you what kind of traffic is being consumed. And it's classified already. One of the cool things about being cloud-based is that we've algorithmically classified hundreds of websites and applications, and we're constantly updating that list. So as new sites come online and become popular, we use deep packet inspection to look at packets passing through the AP and identify what traffic type it is and what application it's coming from. And you can see here we've sorted the application, so the colors denoting a type. So yellow is sort of email-based. This blue here is video-based. But I can sort by usage. And I can see things like, okay, Windows file sharing for the last week has been the top application consumed on the network. And if I were interested in seeing more about any one of these applications, I could click into, say, YouTube and see the top consumers of YouTube here. Is it okay if I click into one of these guys?
Anybody but me.
Anybody?
Yeah, of course. I'm joking.
Okay. I'm going to pick on iPhone because there's no name attached to iPhone. So let's just see. So iPhone has been consuming a bit of YouTube. And you can see that it's recently been connected to, or is connected, in fact, to Pennoni Guest, to your guest Wi-Fi. You can see its real-time signal strength. See that it's an iPhone. If you scroll down a little bit, you can get the consumption pattern for this device. So see exactly what kinds of traffic this device is looking at. And you do not seem to have hostname visibility enabled, but there is a feature in our access points. It's called hostname visibility, and if it's enabled, what it allows administrators to do is see the actual specific destinations for websites and applications that a device has gone to and the active amount of time spent there. So very, very useful from a BYOD perspective to try to see, if there's a troublesome device on the network that seems to be overutilizing a particular application or causing a lot of trouble, you can immediately come in here and see what it's all about. And you can do things like apply policies to a device, to just a specific device, or apply a policy based on which SSID they're connected to, or block a device entirely from your wireless. So very, very useful. Now you may be wondering how exactly you do configure group policies. So again, you're able to define group policies and apply them to individual devices You can apply them to groups of devices. You can apply them to groups of users if you're integrated with Active Directory or Radius. You can also apply them at an SSID-wide level, and you would do that here in the firewall and traffic shaping section. It will look pretty much just like the group policy section, only the rules that you set here will be applied at an SSID-wide level. So in Pennoni's case, this would go out across all locations to all of the Wi-Fi if I were to set a rule here. But I'm going to go to the group policies page because this is where you would set up a policy for an individual device or user or group. And I'm going to pretend like I'm making a new one. Essentially what you can do here is say I want to have custom firewall and traffic shaping rules. And where this is great is you have that deep visibility and control that you saw, deep visibility, into the devices and application traffic passing through your network. And this is where you would come and shape that traffic. So what you can do at layer 7 level is do things like say I want to throttle YouTube. And then I can come in here and select a limit and throttle it. And so what it would do in this case, if I were to save this policy, is that for this particular SSID, which is across the entire Pennoni network, YouTube would be throttled at 500 kilobits per second. So we are getting very, very short on time, I just noticed already. I think what I'm going to do is just show the wireless at this point. There's no point really in diving into MX, MS, or Systems Manager too much, unfortunately, because we did run out of time. But I'm going to try to take some questions in the next 6 minutes that we have. So if there's something that you want demoed or if you do want to see the interface, let me know. But let me check real quick with my colleagues here and see what the questions were. So one question for me was, can Meraki access points connect to Cisco routers for VPN tunneling? And I believe the answer is no. I have to double check on that, but I know that the tunneling protocol used by the access points is sort of a proprietary layer 2 IPsec. So it is designed to enable an access point to connect directly to an MX. So I do not believe that you can connect directly to Cisco routers. However, the MX security appliances with the auto VPN feature, we basically have just pure IPsec for our site-to-site VPN implementations via the MX. So you can very easily set up site-to-site VPN between an MX security appliance and a Cisco firewall that supports IPsec. And I did have a request to show where you would set auto VPN. So let me very quickly do that. I'm going to assume VPN here is your firewalls, your security appliances. So if you are in a security appliance, what you can do is come in here to the site-to-site VPN, configure site-to-site VPN page, and this is where you would enable site-to-site VPN. So you can see you would choose between split tunnel or full tunnel, and then you would decide whether or not you want to have a full mesh VPN or whether you want a hub and spoke mode. This is a new feature that we actually enabled about 3 weeks ago on the MX, was the ability to have hub and spoke and not have to manually configure that using firewall rules, because we had previously defaulted to pure mesh VPN. And then all that happens here is the cloud and the MX will work together to figure out which local network you could export to the VPN. You decide whether you want to do that, and then you hit save. And here's what you're seeing down here are all of the other VPN partners in the mesh for Pennoni. So it's very, very simple. If you have 2 MXs to set up site-to-site VPN, it's IPsec based. So we did have a request to very quickly see Systems Manager. So let me go in there. Let's see, your systems, I'm going to assume that this is your Systems Manager network. Markus. So Systems Manager looks similar in the overview page to what you saw earlier. And I should mention again, Systems Manager is 100% free. You can find it by going to our website and clicking the MDM link and then clicking the big blue button that says Get Started Now. That'll get you set up with a dashboard account, and you can start using MDM immediately. We support iOS, Android, OS X, and Windows devices. So what you would do for the PCs and the Macs, you would download a small installer here, and for iOS and Android, you would get set up with a profile. There's multiple ways to do that, and we walk you step by step through that in the dashboard. So there's instructions there. And once you have these profiles installed on your devices, you would end up with a client list like this. It's really like a real-time configurable report because there's a whole bunch of things that you can look at here. You can, in fact, do things like search with that contextual search that we saw earlier in the client's page. So if I were to click into any one of these devices, what you would see is you would see a map, so where they happen to be physically, best known location, and then you would get a lot of statistics. So this is the configuration page for this individual device. So real-time information about its charge, about its power usage, how long it's been connected to the internet in some fashion. And then, like Markus was saying earlier, you can send notifications and get a more concrete reading on GPS location if you have the Meraki app installed. But you can, regardless, clear passcodes, lock the device remotely, or erase the device entirely if you are concerned about it. You get a bit more information down here. And then what you can do is take these clients, group them into profiles, and then come to, say, a settings page. Select the profile that you want to use. And then this is where you would come in and start enforcing your restrictions. And here is where, as Markus was saying earlier, you would set up sort of the Wi-Fi configuration template that you would push out to mobile devices. So, if you had a pre-shared key, or you wanted to figure out how to get devices to automatically join your wireless without having to go in and type in a key or a code every single time, you would set this up here. You can do it for VPN as well, and there's a whole slew of other things that you could set up, and you could manage applications. So for iOS, you can manage applications here. And so these are the applications that look like get pushed out. The other thing I should say is that we now, fairly recently, support the ability to have you manage not just Apple or Google apps, but your own homegrown enterprise apps, so things that you create yourself. And we are almost at the top of the hour, so let me see if I can squeeze in one or two more questions here. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, folks. We just had a very brief issue with our sound over here. I apologize. What I'm going to do in the interest of time is just wrap this up. We did have a couple of extra slides here that I probably won't have time to go over in detail because I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. But if you do want to find out more information about our product line or get hooked up with a free evaluation, come visit us at Meraki.com. We will be sending your questions to sales reps, so ask away and someone will get back to you with an answer. So we really do appreciate your time and apologize for the glitch in the sound, and look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thank you so much.